How would you like to torture your enemies? Actually, don't answer that. Please don't answer that. But if you want to do so in a cartoony T-rated video game, look no further than Wild 9. Wild 9 is a 2.5D platforming game released in 1998 for the PlayStation. It was made by most of the same people who worked on the Earthworm Jim games, which is kind of interesting, and you see some of those similarities if you know that going into it. In this game you play as Wex, the leader of an eclectic group of adventurers known as the Wild 9. One of these adventurers is carried along with you in your backpack, and he powers up your weapon called the Rig, which we'll come back to in a moment, but the rest of the crew has been kidnapped by an evil alien named Karn, and it's up to you to save your buddies and put a stop to this evil villain who's trying to take over the world. The story isn't really spelled out for you in the game. I guess it's written in the manual, but I don't currently have the manual. I just have this disc, which I pretty much got for free, so that's pretty cool. I used to have the whole game, but I'll talk about that later too. So you play as Wex and you're going through these platforming stages. There's some light puzzles to solve, plenty of enemies to fight, some cool boss battles as well. The interesting thing about this game is your weapon, the Rig. It's sort of this grappling arm. You can grab enemies and you can swing them around and smash them on the ground, or you can actually use your enemies and throw them into obstacles, throw them into traps and things, and you actually get points for killing your enemies in various ways. The marketing behind this game was torture your enemies, and yeah, you're rewarded for like throwing enemies into grinders and all kinds of nasty stuff. It's very cartoony. They spew out green blood, but you're running around, jumping, exploring these levels, looking for power-ups, solving light puzzles, as I say, and taking out lots of bad guys. It's a very fun game at its core and very kind of unique and interesting with that whole grappling arm weapon. You also get other weapons like missiles and grenades that you can use sparingly throughout the game, help you take out some of those tougher bad guys or blow up certain items. I do feel like some of these levels can just be a little too long. They kind of overstay their welcome sometimes. Some of these levels can be like 20 to 30 minutes long, which just feels a little odd for this type of game. Still very fun though. And then the gameplay is mixed up by these other types of levels where you have vehicle-based levels. You might be riding around on your hover bike, shooting missiles at bad guys, chasing somebody down, that kind of thing, avoiding obstacles, which are always fun. You have some free-falling levels as well where you're just falling from the sky down some kind of tube-shaped area, and you've got other bad guys floating down and you got to grab onto them and smash them against the wall, that kind of thing. So these are always fun, and those are over pretty quickly too. They're only a few minutes long, and it definitely breaks things up, adds some variety. Even to the main levels though, there's always some variety there as well. We see new gameplay mechanics added throughout the game, new kinds of environmental traps and puzzles and things that need to be solved. One or two are a little bit obscure, and I kind of had to look them up to see what the heck was going on. There's one case where nothing tells you you have to find these 3 objects and destroy them to open up the path, but you do. And that's the only way you can get through the level, and I had no idea, so I'm like, where do I go? How do I do this? Oh, okay, now I know I have to blow up these 3 things that were not really that obvious to me. But then also as you're going through these levels, you're saving your friends. Your friends all have some sort of unique special abilities of their own. They have their own special powers, and once you rescue them, they kind of follow you out to the end of the level, and they have certain interesting ways of making the level more exciting and unique. Like, there's this one guy who explodes every few seconds, so you can kind of carry him around with your grappling arm and use him to blow up enemies and clear paths. One of your other buddies is some sort of crazy alien animal thing, and you can actually ride on top of him. So all of these friends have kind of an interesting thing they add to each level as well. They're not present in every level, but it's always cool when they show up, except for one of the last ones, which is just an escort mission, and that's kind of annoying. Does anybody really enjoy escort missions in games? I don't think so. The game industry needs to do away with those, but this is a 25-year-old game, so. As for the graphics, it definitely has a very cool style, very comic book inspired. The levels themselves tend to be very dark. This is like a sci-fi space type setting. You're on these alien planets. Still, it's very colorful and vibrant, and I think because of its cartoony nature, even being an early 3D game, I think it's aged pretty gracefully. Then you have all these loading scenes like you're seeing behind me, where they're kind of cartoon illustrations, and there's just a lot of character. I really could have seen these characters and this game becoming a whole franchise. You know, like Earthworm Jim had many games. He even had a cartoon series back in the day. I would have loved to see Wild 9 get the same treatment. Maybe you get a comic book series or something, some kind of continuation, because it's a really cool world they've built, really interesting characters, and I think we could have really seen a lot more of them and gotten a lot more enjoyment even in other mediums. So it's a shame. As for the sound, this game was done by Tommy Tallarico Studios. Look, I know Tommy Tallarico is a bit of a controversial figure today, but I was always a fan of him, and this was really him in his prime, I think. The soundtrack is awesome, kind of a mix between rock, electronic, and more cinematic music. Really suits the game very well. Tommy did the voice acting too for the main character Wex. There's not a ton of dialogue in the game, but he's frequently coming out with these one-liners like Wexcellent, like cool, it's all good. Really cheesy stuff, but fun, full of that 90s attitude that was present in everything. And then the enemies in the game always let out these tortured screams whenever you're messing with them. Yeah, you're going to be hearing lots and lots of awful screams in this game. So much so that my buddy Ghoul, who recommended this video, he suggested I make this video. Galicide Ghoul on YouTube, check him out. He was telling me like when he was a little kid, it was just too much for him. Those screams freaked him out. And yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's very cartoony. It seemed very edgy at the time, but today it's kind of silly and fun. I remember that was a huge part of the marketing though too. This game was very hyped up in magazines, and it seemed like it was going to be big. And I really enjoyed it, but I feel like the world just kind of forgot about it, which is unfortunate because it's still a really fun game to go back to today. Like I say, it has a ton of charm and a ton of creativity, just cool characters and everything else, fun gameplay. And yeah, it makes me sad that this game didn't go further into a whole multimedia franchise. I think that would have been great. It's a game I played and loved as a kid. I remember borrowing this game from my brother-in-law, and I liked it enough to eventually get my own copy. Not this copy, I wish I still had my old complete copy, but it's not an expensive game. You can get it complete for under 20 bucks still, and I recommend it, or just emulate it. Either way, I do recommend checking it out though. You can finish the whole game in about 4 to 5 hours. It's not a terribly hard game. When I was a kid it was hard. I got stuck on it pretty early on and just never finished it, but now as an old man with some experience, it's not so bad. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't before. And if you have and you're like me, maybe you never finished it, go back and play it again. You might be surprised how well it holds up. It's not perfect, but it's really good. Who knows, maybe we'll see some sort of reboot one day. That would be awesome, but anyways. Hey, thanks for watching the video today. Thanks again to Galicide Ghoul. Go check him out, guys. He does a lot of fun live streams. Go give him a follow if you haven't yet. What are your thoughts on Wild 9? Have you played this one before? Let me know in the comments. I will see you next time. Take care.